What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. Here I am for the fourth time. What do I say for the fourth time? Well, the first three of these intros sucked. Why do they suck so much? The first one was great, but some people had actually asked me why I wear headphones when I am recording an interview. Now, I thought I didn't need to explain that, and I thought that was kind of, obvious, to help not talk over people, to make sure your equipment's working, yada, yada, yada. Well, when I recorded one of the intros for today's episode with Marlon, I forgot to turn on my microphone. So I'd recorded the, 8-minute intro, whatever it is, and was talking to basically nobody. So here I am yet again. The other two sucked after that. For the fourth time, here I am with the intro. Today's guest is Marlon Marrache from the IA Guy podcast. Marlon spent about 25 years with the LAPD, retiring about 2.5 years ago. And he spent numerous years within the LAPD in the Internal Affairs Unit. Marlon and I get into his experiences in IA, his actual positions and his roles, and I'm going to let him explain all of that and answer some questions from fans when we have the interview, which we already did. So in a couple of minutes, you'll be able to hear it. With that, let's get into today's sponsor.
In Dexter, they have explosives, some type of grenades. They're in between the houses down here.
Today's sponsor is PointmanDefensiveSolutions.com, my business. Go to PointmanDefensiveSolutions.com if you are in the New England area and you are looking for any medical or firearms training. We offer numerous different types of classes. You can actually find the podcast website on there now, and the store for both the podcast and the business is up on that website currently. PointmanPodcast.com will be released shortly. But if you're looking for any medical training, come over here, click on Medical tab. We have law enforcement, canine, active bystander, rescue task force, OHRV, beachside trauma, and workplace active medical. For anything else other than law enforcement, we will work with whatever department or business it is that you are contacting about and develop a first aid TCCC style training for your business or department, for a rec department, for a power plant, for whatever it is. We will develop a specific first aid TCCC style training for your business. Law enforcement, if you guys are sick and tired of the same old CPR first aid, which I have seen in this new state, please contact us. We will offer your agency free seats for hosting about a 2 to 3 day class at your agency. Why do I say 2 to 3 days? We will tailor it based on your needs in your training schedule. If you're looking for firearms training, come over here, click on the firearms button. We offer 4 seats for private lessons. Private lessons can range from anything to intro to firearms, because you don't want to go on a range with other people. If you don't know anything about firearms, you want to get yourself familiarize yourself around different platforms. The whole 9 yards, we have it. Up to 4 people per class for a private firearm. We offer beginner classes to advanced classes in precision pistol, precision rifle, just for private lessons and whatnot. With the pistol, we offer red dot optic class, skill builder classes, like I was saying, precision pistol and rifle, basically the same for both. And if you're in law enforcement and you want to reach out to us to host training at your agency, we will give you free seats for hosting that class. We will come in and work with, if you're in Town A and you want to host the Town A firearms class for that season, whatever it is, and you want to invite neighboring agencies, you can do so. We will work with your agency to develop a training curriculum that suits your needs, and we will offer that to outside agencies as well. So come over here, click on the firearms tab, and if you're interested in what we have to offer, go to the contact page and contact us. The Point Man Podcast tab, that is the new logo. I like it. It looks sick. I don't care what you guys say. The new PointmanPodcast.com will be available shortly. Here we have recent interviews and links to our YouTube page. If you're not following us on Spotify, I can't talk today. Sorry. Spotify, Apple, iHeart, YouTube, whatever it is, go to those, like, comment, and subscribe. Okay. We have a link to our guest websites and merchandise through our guests as well. The Anti-Hero Podcast, Cops Direct, Warden's Watch, Warhog Tactical, Seth Gale, or Counterculture Inc. Go over there, check out Counterculture. Look at that. It's a great website. Great website. Sorry. Great website with all the links to all of the podcasts that are on the network. All right, guys. So if you are interested in what we have to offer, we currently are running free shipping over $50 for items spent over $50 in total. All right. We have the podcast t-shirt, a couple medical items right now. Go over there, shop around, buy something. All right. With that being said, today's guest, like I was talking about earlier, is Marlon Marrache from the IA Guy podcast. You can follow Marlon on anywhere you listen to your podcast, the IA Guy. And you can follow him on Instagram. Marlon is a part of Savage Training Group, Body Worn Camera Library, and offers his own consulting service for any IA. So listen to the upcoming interview. With that being said, here's Marlon. So Marlon, how's everything going today? All right?
Life is great, bro. Summertime, like you said, it's breaking 90s. Life is good. Can't complain.
Yeah. How's the podcast been treating you? It seems like I had just started my podcast again recently after taking a break, and I just kind of stumbled across you and in the IA Guy podcast. And has it been around a long time? Has it been around for a while? Just recent?
Just 1 year. So December, we celebrated the 1 year mark.
Nice.
And just a little over the year mark, it got to 1 million views. And then you ask yourself, how can an internal affairs police podcast can get to such views? And it only proves that it's a topic. It's a I wouldn't say so much situation. It's what cops go through. Not all,
Yeah.
but people go through this process, right? This disciplinary system, if you will. And for whatever reason, we just don't talk about it enough. One, two, it's very taboo, right?
Yeah.
And it's very hush hush. And then I always thought to myself, bro, you know what? There is there's this hypocrisy that's attached to our profession because we preach this transparency. And you know what? If you want to be fully transparent, then you know what? Here it is for you. Let's talk IA because no one really talks about it. And let's hope we can get some lessons learned, man. What do you think?
Is it old school doctrine that made it sort of hush and don't talk about it? If you've been one, you're kind of, the black sheep, you're the outcast. Is that like an old school thing that, having gone through the IA trainings yourself when you got into that position, is that something that, they told you guys to tell the officers and never to speak about it? Or is that a union thing from back in the day? Where do you kind of understand that, how that started?
Well, interesting you ask, because a lot of the guests that come in, that's one of the questions that we really dig into is like, hey, what was your first impression of internal affairs when you were in the academy? In other words, did someone from internal affairs come in and say, hey, this is who we are. These are our duties and responsibilities. Let me tell you do's and don'ts, pros and cons, and what misconduct is, et cetera, et cetera. But then after that, we started thinking, well, you know what? Not many people actually get to the academy and do a presentation from internal affairs. And let's be honest, between you and I know in my academy 26 years ago, bro, all I wanted to do was just fucking graduate.
Yeah.
You wanted to get to the finish line, dude. And so even if I did come in and do a presentation, an hour or two, whatever the case may be, it's probably going to go through one ear and out the other. And we're just going to be like, yeah, okay, I get it, whatever. And then we start asking our guests about during your probationary period, what did your FTOs tell you about internal affairs, right? Or what was your first impression? Because here's the deal. If we can all agree that internal affairs has a negative stigma attached to it, well, where did that come from, right? And so that was a long way to answer your question, but the short answer to your brother, you know what? It's police culture. You know,
Yeah.
it's what leadership, experts call organizational culture. I call it cop culture. And it just so happens that we're this evil entity. And there's this mystique about what we do or what we're supposed to do or what we are what's our identity? In other words, what are our functions? Do we go after someone or is it biased? So it's just culture, man. It's been around since like the 40s and the 50s, and I want to say that back in those days, they probably told you, hey, you see those guys in suits? That's IA, man. Fuck those guys. If they come, that means you're in big trouble, right? If you get IA or someone from IA gets a hold of you, that means some shit's going down and you probably didn't do something good.
Yeah, yeah. It's I mean, you obviously I should have asked you before if we
Hmm.
started that. I had that conversation about who you are, where you came from, all that sort of stuff. But obviously you worked for over 25 years LAPD.
Yes,
So
LAPD.
25 years LAPD. LAPD is the second largest police department in America, right?
That's correct. I think it's
So
third, but we can go
okay.
with second.
Yeah. Either way, at that point you're splitting hairs. But I
Yeah.
mean, so it's a little bit different. So my experience with that is state of New Hampshire. I went through the academy 15 years
Uh-huh.
ago, state of New Hampshire. Everybody that's a police officer in the state, everybody goes to the same academy. Troopers, city cops, town cops, like back in the day when they had highway
Hmm.
patrol when they were all
Hmm.
merged in. So I think at least from like a large agency perspective, and I haven't the largest agency I've worked for was about 70 from top to bottom. But from like a large agency perspective, it's a little bit you can have that separation of your IA person or the
Yeah.
IA investigator, but with these
Hmm.
small agencies, because the one thing I do remember out of college getting my criminal justice degree was that 50% of the police departments in America have 10 full-time officers or less. It's like plus or minus,
Wow.
plus or
Yeah.
minus. So so it's the people who are doing IAs they could be the person you're on shift with. If you have another body on shift with you, or it could be
Yeah.
your direct supervisor. What's something that what's I guess like the question is how do you kind of mitigate that? Because I can see it would
Yeah.
be very difficult for that IA investigator having to work shifts and see this person day in and day out. And I assume that in LA that you may have gone your entire career like only seeing one or a person one or two or handful of times throughout their entire career.
That's correct. 100% spot on when you talk about big, big organizations like LAPD, NYPD, Chicago PD. You're in the thousands. So for you to get IA'd uh, in one precinct or one division, department or another, chances are the precinct, division, or department from the other side of town or the city, it's probably not even going to know about your IA. That's just because it's a big machine,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of personnel. Now, where the big challenge with internal affairs comes in is what you're talking about is the 50 or less. I mean, can you imagine being in an agency of just 20 or less?
Been
You have
there.
one sergeant. Yeah. And next
Yeah.
thing you know, here comes a public complaint. You're the only sergeant and you're getting a cup of coffee here in California at the local 7-Eleven.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, someone comes up to you and says, hey, you know what? Hey, Sarge, I saw this cop in a police vehicle take someone out of their car and throw them up against the wall. And you're like, oh shit, I guess I'm not going to enjoy my cup of coffee. And now you're going to have to, start investigating, right? Making an inquiry, kind of gathering facts, gathering evidence, if you will. So my point is that smaller agencies have it way more challenging. I'm not going to say it's difficult because it's not difficult to investigate. It's just very, very challenging. So one way to mitigate that is, you know what? Somehow, some way, outsource it. If you, as a chief of police, get together with your city council and say, look, if we don't get that many IAs in, I don't know, the last 5 years, we've only had like maybe six, then why don't we outsource it to an experienced investigator, retired, that has, no dog in the fight,
Yeah.
Uh, call the IA guy all the way from the West Coast.
His name's Marlon.
His name is
Yeah.
Marlon Marrache. He's a retired LAPD sergeant that took 25 years, retired 2.5, almost 3 years ago to be in July, who spent, I promoted to sergeant in 2007. So I spent 15 years as a sergeant. And within my time as a sergeant, I was heavily, uh, I should say, I got a heavy dosage of the disciplinary system. Is because that's just something that I don't know. I wouldn't say it fell in my lap. It's just something that I enjoyed. Why?
Right.
Because there is this sense of relevancy. There's a
Mhm.
sense of purpose, more so when the department gets it wrong. Now, we're not going to talk stats. We don't want to, we don't want to fall off the rails here, but statistically proven that it's a very minimal fraction of the population that gets IA'd, one, and it's a very small percentage where the department says, hey, you know what? You did something wrong. We're going to IA you. But guess what, man? We got it all wrong and you've been exonerated from all your allegations. And so that's definitely the way to mitigate, especially for small departments. You know what? Hire from someone from the outside or a neighboring agency, right?
Mhm.
So if you have a neighboring agency, maybe the chief can call the other chief and say, hey, you know what? Can you do me a solid? Can you get your sergeant to come out here and do this IA? That way it keeps away what? The biases. It keeps away the conflict, some impropriety maybe, right?
Yeah.
And you don't know who this person is whatsoever. And so that's the best way to do it because once you get your buddy, your boy, your academy classmate, it tends to, especially in a small agency, you guys all know each other.
Yeah.
You know this. You tell me when someone gets an IA in a small agency, true or false, everybody knows about it.
Everybody knows about it. 100%
True.
all the time. Having been there, everybody knows about it. So,
Everybody knows about it, and by the time it gets to the chief, right, that telephone line,
yeah.
you're probably this suspect that is wanted for fucking murder,
Oh
bro.
yeah, yeah. That telephone system, like that old school thing that they do in classrooms, where you start that sentence at the beginning of the kids, and then it's a completely different sentence at the end. You're like, what, what the, what the fuck? Because
Yeah,
I wish I knew I did that, because if I knew I did that, I'd have the experience and and it'd be great. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
like the stories that just come out of these things are
yeah,
like ridiculous.
yeah.
It's
And you're like,
just
chief. You're like, chief. Whoa.
yeah,
Time out.
yeah.
That's not what happened.
Yeah, exactly. That's not even close, like, yeah, yeah. But we can get into that on your podcast one day.
Yes, please. Absolutely. Would love to have you on.
But I pulled. So when we reached out to one another about you coming on the podcast, I was like, you know what,
Hmm.
not today, ISIS. I'm not going to fall for this for this joke right now. But
Okay.
I was a little weary, because and then I started watching your content, listen to your Iron Sights, your Tone Alert podcast when
Uh-huh.
you had those guys on, and when you were on Scott's show, and I got a better understanding of not only who you are as a person, Marlon, but the IA position in your podcast itself.
Yeah.
I think one of the most interesting things that I'd heard you talk about was that you think that someone who has been through an IA would almost make a better investigator for IA complaints than not having been through one. Is that right?
That's 100% correct. And I say that with, oh God, not just with passion, but more than anything with some certainty that if you have gone through the system, the way you were treated is actually the punishment. There's
Yeah.
this. As a matter of fact, I'm coming out with a T-shirt soon. You got to get merch when you do this stuff. And one of those quotes is, and it's become famous. One of my guests said it best. He said, "Marlon, you know what? The punishment's not the penalty. The punishment is the process, right?
Yeah.
And it's the way you're treated." So I'm a true believer that if you are going to be an internal affairs investigator, you know what, Lieutenant Captain, Commander, Chief, let me do this job because I know exactly how it feels to be part of this. Uh, Sometimes you are left in the island all by yourself. Sometimes you're in that dark alley, right? and no
Mhm.
one's there to kind of hold your hand and walk you through this whole process. And you know what, brother, we are to blame. We not only are we our worst enemies,
Yeah, we
but
eat
we
our
are
own.
to blame. We eat our own, but we are to be held accountable as to why is it that we are in April of 2025 and we still think and believe that IA are rats, are, Blue Falcons. We are just the worst of the worst, and it shouldn't be that way, right?
Right.
And so, by someone going through the process, it's going to make you a way better IO, 100% the best investigating officer, and that's because you know what it feels like. And here's the catch: let's just say you and I right now, we're logged on, pushing the sled is what we call it, right?
Yep.
We're out there doing work, bro. All of a sudden, we get a radio call for service. I don't know, angry woman, angry man, man with a knife, whatever the case may be, right? We get there, we deploy tactically, safe, sound. We start de-escalating. Hey, drop the knife, drop the knife, drop the knife. Okay, you know what? Hey, bro, you got less lethal. I got lethal. Here you with the beanbag, taser, whatever, right? Whatever tools you may have. And for whatever reason, we get into a use of force. Boom, boom. Next thing you know, Donnybrook, it's on. Uh, we arrest them, code 4 in custody. We're good to go, right?
Mhm.
And somehow, some way, there was an IA out of it because they complained, whatever. Let's just make the allegations rude, discourteous, violation of policy, neglect of duty, all of the above. Now, you and I both know, you know what? Maybe, you know what? Okay, here's a good one. We didn't go code 6. We didn't get on the air to tell dispatch, hey, you know what? Show us at scene. That's what code 6 means for us in LAPD.
Okay.
In other words, show us code 6 at First in Los Angeles.
So you're off. Yeah. But I just say I'm
For
off.
whatever,
Yeah.
yeah, for whatever reason, you and I, whatever, when this whole situation was going down so quick that you forgot and I forgot to actually tell dispatch, hey, we're code 6, we're at scene. That's an IA, whatever, right?
Okay.
Here we are. You and I both know that that is a violation of policy, which means that the classification is probably going to come back sustained. Sustained means that it occurred.
Right.
Not sustained means it didn't occur. We use unfounded, another way of classifying it.
Yeah.
Unfounded means it didn't occur. Sustained means that it actually occurred.
Right.
Now, you and I are waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for this to be adjudicated, for us to be, I guess you guys call it Garrity, for us to be skellied, be presented and say, hey, all right, look, man, here's your IA. This is your punishment. Have a nice day. Go back out and push the sled. Right? That whole that's my point. Even knowing that you actually did violate policy and you know you have an IA and you know you're waiting around, that's what we need to fix.
Well, I think
So
I
go
think it
ahead.
comes down to, sorry to interrupt you, but I think it comes
No, it's
down to
good.
the department's almost overall view of how policies are like either viewed or enforced within the police department. I've written policies for an agency before, and I always
Uh-huh.
told the people that were working there that it was my understanding and my interpretation that especially with a small agency, and this was a very
Yeah.
small agency, so you'd probably be like fucking like shocked about how small it was, but so I was always under the impression that policies are there as guidelines, and
Hmm.
you by standards and by Kalea or by the New Hampshire law enforcement accreditation standards, they want certain things. Well, you can't fucking have that when you have a one man show on
Yeah,
throughout the day. You
I
can't.
agree.
You can only do certain things. So policies are there as guidelines, and sometimes you go weeks and months without handling a certain type of call, and then you have that policy to fall back on when you have to enforce whatever it is with that call, whether it's
Yeah.
we call them involuntary IEAs when you're a suicidal person or whatever it is. When you're actually there doing with it, if you haven't dealt with that thing in a while, then you fall back to the guideline and the policy of how the police
Right.
department enforces it. So like I think it comes down to the chiefs or the lieutenants, the captains, how they view them. Some of them view it as black and white, and you better not step out of the bounds of this policy. But at the same time, as the one writing it for another agency, I was like, no, policies like, yes, you have to wear your seatbelt when you're going code 3 to a call or something
Yeah,
like that.
100%,
But
100%.
if you're going 5 to 10 miles an hour because it's middle of the night and you're going around corners and you're looking to find something that's happening, like, take your seatbelt off. That's what I do. That's what everybody
Yeah,
does. I want you to have your
yeah,
seatbelt off. So I think it almost comes down to how the agency views it. If it's more of a guideline that they can be bended and all that sort of
right.
stuff.
Right. And just to touch before we move on to the next topic about why internal affairs should have an investigator that actually has been through the whole process. It's just as simple as, I just explained to you about this, being in the dark alley by yourself, being in the island all by yourself. Can you imagine if you had someone that went through the ringer, bro, from beginning to end, calls you and says, "Hey, John, check this out, man. Your interview is going to be in 2 weeks. Okay, make sure you get representation. Your attorney. We'll see you in 2 weeks, right?" In that interview, you say, "Hey, John, you know what? I'm gonna have a couple days off, but dude, hopefully by next Friday or next Thursday, I'm gonna write it all up." Right? "Hey, John, you know what? I wrote it all up, and now I'm gonna send it to the next level review. So the lieutenant's gonna look at it hopefully in 2 weeks. Hey, John, you know what? The lieutenant's on vacation. He's gonna look at it hopefully within 2 weeks, but I'll be up on it. Hey, John, you know what? The lieutenant actually looked at it. It's good to go, bro. Now we're just going to prepare it for the chief's presentation. Hey, John, check this out. Dude, the chief's presentation is going to be on May 15th at 2 p.m. Hey, John, you know what? The chief saw it presented. You should be hearing something back. You should be hearing something from us soon. All right. And that is someone who's actually not only vested, right, in your well-being to look out for your best interest. Because here's the deal: whether it's unfounded, not sustained, or sustained, regardless of the outcome, you know what, John? I'm there for you because I communicated, and I'm not going to leave you in the island all alone. And
Right.
that's not hard to ask. Now, in a big organization, right? Big, huge organization, Chicago PD, NYPD, Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, LAPD. I get it. I understand. But bro, how many times have you heard, "Man, I'm swamped. I'm busy." Guess what? Everybody's fucking swamped and busy, bro.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's every profession. And hey, bro, we're tired of hearing that. Be there for them. Do the right thing by holding them by the hand and walking through that dark alley with them.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't agree with that more. That's if you have to be there for one another, especially when it comes down to like this, especially this day and age, mental health. I mean, Christ,
Yeah.
we saw another officer kill herself
Uh,
in Chicago at the police department. So, and I don't know any of the backstory. I don't know if it has
right.
nothing to do with an IA. It could be just completely
Right.
separate. But, it's you have to. It comes down to mental health and all that sort of stuff. You have to be there for people, and it's not, from the IA investigators position, it's not that you're walking them like hand in hand, like, okay, like follow me through this process. No, but at the same time, if it was unfounded and you didn't do that, I might be fucking pissed off, like
Yeah.
at this agency. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
rightfully so. Because I can only imagine, especially in LA, how many BS complaints that they they must have
Yeah.
gotten.
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, you bring up a good point. When you get it wrong, right, the department,
Right.
how, I suppose one question should be, how do you hold the department accountable? Right. And you don't want to be a dick and be an asshole and point fingers and say, "Hey, I can't fucking believe you put me through all this shit. It's been a year and you guys got it wrong. F you." But now you want me to log on, push this leg, and go respond to calls for service.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. And I think I was thinking about this because you and I were talking the other day about having podcast
Yeah.
active.
Yeah.
That is, what's my thought about that? And
Yeah.
a lot of things came to mind, and that's one of those. And we'll touch that in a little bit.
Well, the only other follow-up question I had to your scenario before we get into that one,
Yeah,
was that you mentioned, like, during that, the guy, when he's resisting, you're there with your partner, you forgot to go
yeah,
code 6 and sign off and whatever, you get a complaint that you're rude and discourteous. I think, I don't know. I mean, you have to talk to people at their level of understanding and their level of knowledge, right? Does that make sense? And I'm not trying to sound like discourteous to the people, but
yeah, yeah,
it's, I don't talk to the 80-year-old grandmother the same way I might talk to the the 17-year-old wannabe gangbanger.
100%. Yeah,
You know?
yeah, you're talking about that buzzword tactical language. I
Yeah.
got you, bro. I got you. Here's the way I see it, and this is what I would suggest, just from experience with small agencies. Well, I don't have a lot of experience with small agencies, just experiencing internal affairs.
Right.
This topic is, if you're in a small department, right, and you're in a small city, you're better off. Look, if you're going to cut a face sheet and do an IA on a discourtesy, improper remarks, whatever the case may be, you're better off doing a face-to-face mediation and figuring out how you can resolve that conflict. Because if that's your beat every day
Right.
and you're trying to get a cup of coffee at the local coffee shop, that person's going to walk in, bro.
Yeah, you're gonna see them. And you
You're going to see him again.
and
And
especially in that small agency where they may be driving by as you're getting your ass
right.
kicked on the side of the road.
And so then the question is, how do you resolve conflict?
Right.
Right? Or how transparent are we amongst ourselves with the public?
Mhm.
One way of doing that is having a face to face mediation with an experienced certified mediator to come in and get the parties to get through impasse and somehow, some way say, hey, John, dude, the reason why I dropped fucking F bombs is because you weren't paying attention. Bro, I told you, like, you want, we can watch the body worn video if you want. However, I did tell you like 6 times, right? And yeah, I got a little frustrated, bro.
Yeah.
Well, you pulled me over because of my race. Okay, got it. Listen, the first time that I actually saw you is when you rolled down your window and I approached the driver's side.
Yeah.
And you said, hi, officer, how can I help you? That's what you said. It's the
Yeah.
first time. I don't know who's in the vehicle. You got tinted windows. You were going 50 on a 35. You were flying down this main boulevard at 3:30 p.m. in front of everybody, dude. Can you imagine if someone was walking their kid down the street and you just happen to fly by? I mean, those are the things that I'm thinking, Mr. Johnson. I don't know about you. So what happens is when you create that dialogue, they start realizing that, you know what? Maybe, yeah, maybe it's tough being a cop. I didn't think a cop would think of all those things. So, anyways,
Yeah.
just wanted to throw that out there that if you're in a small agency and you're watching or listening, you know what? Maybe you should tell your sergeant, hey, why don't you call that person in and let's break bread, man. What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with communicating and trying to foster these relationships, right? We're always trying to do what? Better the community,
Yeah.
better bridge these gaps, foster these relationships. One of the best way of doing that is when you think you're going to get an IA for a discourtesy or improper remarks, something along those lines, and that you take the lead and say, hey, Sarge, Lieutenant, Captain, call them in so we can have that conversation.
Awesome. I like that. That's a good idea. Now, getting back into what you just brought up,
Yeah.
a conversation the other day. So I've heard you on Iron Sights and Tonal Bar,
Yes.
and you were mentioning, or you say that there's never enough law enforcement podcasts out there. Now, what's the caveat to that? Because I can understand that. Yeah, I completely agree, man. I'm one myself. I'd be a hypocrite if I said anything different. So, what potential issues do you see for guys like myself I'm a part of the Counterculture Network, so there's a bunch of law enforcement podcasts on there. What potential issues do you see? I mean, there could be a plethora of them, if that's the right word, of
Well,
just of issues
yeah.
that could
Well, a
come up.
couple of, hey, bro, if I'm command staff and I'm listening to Copville or, or I'm listening to Tyler, I just can't help but to fucking laugh my ass off because they're just so good. They
Oh yeah,
really are.
yeah,
It's a whole different style, and I love it. Here's another one. Dom Izzo is another good. Uh, uh,
yeah. He's
you know,
calling out the TikTok
He's
god.
an advocate, yeah. So Tom is a good advocate, right? Because he's a podcaster too, right? So
Yeah,
he's got his podcast,
yeah,
and he, his style and his modality. A lot of people don't like the delivery, but you know what? It's good stuff. It's stuff that you need to hear,
right.
right? So each and every one of us have a certain style and modality to deliver and to have that disposition, whichever that may be. Where I see where they might, when you draw the red line. And this is only if you start talking about active cases, you start talking about people at work, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you're having the locker room talk and you're putting it on social media and you're just, you're blasting everybody's info, what's that, quote unquote, you putting them on blast.
Yeah. I can understand that one. I can understand that.
Absent that, I'm all for it. However, we have to have boundaries and rules, uh, and some agencies should have policies. I think it's a fascinating idea for active police officers to have podcasts because how are you going to be informed about current issues?
Hmm.
Right, that's very important, and it's a way of recruitment and retention. Right, there's a
Yeah.
lot of people that can listen to you and say, "Wow, you know what? That's he's out here telling us how the job is, you know, and misinformation, you know. So we can lean to Dom, we can lean to Copville, we can lean to a couple of these other podcasters to really inform you. And what do we always preach? Transparency. Well, if you want transparency, here you have it. You
See,
know,
I think yeah, and I completely agree with you 100%. I think the only way that we can get in trouble is if you're giving too much of your, I don't say too much of your opinion, as fucking ridiculous as that sounds, because it's our podcast, it's our opinion. But
yeah.
if it somehow crosses the proverbial line that some people who are in chain of command might not agree with, you know what I mean? If you
Yeah,
give it,
some people here's a problem, John. When you do it, the ones that are watching, which is your bosses, uh, you know what? Someone's just not going to like it.
yeah, 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 and then you know
That
what happened?
that's
And
that's mistake number one, right? Is
yeah,
that someone's not going to like it, right? Mistake number two is you're getting too popular, you know.
yeah,
So popularity with the fact that it's personal, uh,
all
they
comes
can
down to
easily just.
jealousy.
Yeah, of course. And here's the deal. Well, dude, why don't you do it?
Yeah,
Right? No, no,
yeah.
then go ahead and you do it as well. And here's the big challenge of it all is that and it goes back to culture. Me personally, it's where do officers have um, a platform to control their narrative,
Right.
especially if you got a where and here's the deal, and it goes both ways. It's both sides of the aisle. All right, if you have an officer that was involved in a pursuit and they violated pursuit policy and that pursuit was fucking crazy, 10 cars fucking crashed the whole nine, and you screwed up, okay, you can come to any podcaster, right,
Hmm.
any podcast, and say, hey, let me tell you about what happened.
Hell yeah, I want to hear
I
it.
have 10 years on. 3 years ago, I got into a pursuit, and this is what happened. I hope that by you hearing my story, whoever is listening and watching, you can learn something from that. So that would be one side of the aisle. The
Hmm.
other side of the aisle is the ones that right, command staff, they don't want to hear this one. Hey, you know what? I got sent home. I got sent home because of these reasons, right? And it's been a whole year and I've been exonerated. In other words, I didn't do anything wrong. Here's another one. You know what? I got into an OIS and it was major propaganda on the media, newsworthy event. Everybody knew about it. And I got filed on criminally. Uh, they presented the case to the local DA. It got rejected. Then I had to go to the IA process. And you know what? Everything that I did, I was exonerated.
In LA, does that run congruently with the actual? If it was an OIS an officer involved shooting, for people who
It's
don't know,
congruently, but sometimes it take their sweet time, right? Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah, there's a clean and dirty team. We can talk about that. And, well, what you can do is you can come to the OIS course and hear all
Yeah.
about it. But no, to answer your question is yes, it happens congruently. You present the criminal filings to the local DA. Sometimes the DOJ gets involved because they have what they
Yeah.
call a qualified event for them to actually respond and take over the criminal portion of the OIS. Then comes the IA. But my
Gotcha.
point is that let's just say that happens, and I'm a 15-year cop, and that happened 5 years ago. I've been completely exonerated. There's no litigation, no civil suit, no nothing, no wrongful death, whatever the case may be. Where do you go tell uh, that? Where do you go tell that story so that we can learn?
Back
That's
in the
the only
early,
reason why I started the podcast.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure if I were to ask all of us police podcasters, hey, what's the reason why you actually started this? It's because you know what? We want to get some growth, man. We want to get our message out there and hopefully someone learns or gets some takeaways from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're completely right. When you talk about like the old school way of doing things, like the early '90s or whatever, the people never talked about shit. I mean, as far as I know,
No,
like and
no.
when they did, they were probably hammered at a bar talking about it to either the guys they worked with or maybe not, just bottling it up or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
the reason why I stopped or I started the podcast was for mental health reasons within the job and kind of like trying to do my part to help end that proverbial stigma when it came to like, oh,
Yeah.
you don't want to talk about it, just fucking just shut up and just go over to your corner and just swallow it and
Yeah.
just keep it to yourself. And that's not, I mean, dude, there was, I forget what year it was recently, but there were more officers who committed suicide than actually died in line of duty, and
Oh
that's
no, 100%.
yeah. So that's one of the reasons why I started. Obviously, I like talk. I would have never been able to meet you, never mind talk to you,
Yeah.
had I never started a podcast, and so that's the second reason that's also great.
Yeah. And you know what? For me, John, it gives me purpose. It makes me feel relevant. And the calls that I get, the DMs that I get are just they're priceless, bro. They're so valuable.
Yeah,
I have a client, right? He sent me his IA and hired me to consult and look at his entire internal affairs investigation. And what I do with a fine tooth comb, I do what I call a biopsy, right? A
yeah.
full examination analysis. And I'm able to tell you whether it's a real good IA or if it's got more holes than Swiss cheese. And what ends up happening is, yeah, it does have more holes than Swiss cheese. But he himself, he said, Marlon, you know what? And by the way, it's a dishonesty allegation, so he's got to go through arbitration. And we're moving forward with the process. But he did say that if it wasn't for your podcast, I felt lost. I've been super stressed, and it makes me feel like I'm not alone. And I know you get that a lot with your podcast, and that's for all of us.
Hmm.
Is that there's voices that are being heard, and it doesn't make you feel like you're the only one that's going through this,
Yeah.
especially with
Mhm.
an IA, which is
Yeah.
more, it's more personal, it's more emotional.
Yep.
Uh,
Definitely. I mean, when I first went through mine, it was fucking awful. So, and it
yeah,
was the black sheep of, and I put that proverbial target on my own back, but the IA portion of it was
it was horrible.
horrible. Yeah, I
No,
can't
I
think of
went through.
any other word.
Yeah, I went through one when my daughter was born
Oh, that
back in
sucks.
2004. So yeah, dude, I thought I was going to lose it all.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's the first thing everybody thinks.
You're gonna
And
lose
so
your
to your
house, lose your
point,
bank account.
yeah, you're going to lose everything, and
Yeah,
that's the way that's just culture, bro.
yeah,
That's just us. To answer your question when we first started, our conversation is just us being the way we think that we were taught or
yeah.
told. I should say not taught, but what we've been told, right?
Yeah, I get it. I get it. So, I do have a couple questions that I kind
Yeah,
of I polled the people I work with about asking questions to an IA person and
please do so.
yeah. So, actually, what was one of your toughest cases that you've ever investigated? Whether if it was one that was in the news, that was going on and whatever, or just one of your if you can get into it now, what was like one of your most toughest cases?
Yeah, I'll keep it in general, some in generalities, if you will. What I will say is that in LAPD they have a section, a unit. in internal affairs called the advocate section. So your sole job as a sergeant is to pretty much um, play the role of the prosecuting attorney. You know, it's obviously it's adverse, right? And it's got a prosecutorial tone and identity to it. So my job was to prosecute cops. And out of the 30, and it's in a hearing. So basically, what you might, what officers go through in your state or many other states will go through arbitration, civil service hearings.
Yeah.
We kept that in-house. And so
Okay.
LAPD is the only agency in the entire United States that has a civil tribunal hearing, right? I should say tribunal more than civil tribunal here within the department. So my job was to represent the chief of police, right?
Hmm.
And you know, don't take this. Hope you're listening. Whoever's listening and watching
My
doesn't take
12
this.
listeners.
Yeah, doesn't take this wrong. But the
Yeah.
best bang for your buck in that assignment is false statements. What a lot of people call dishonesty. So we can agree that if you are found guilty for lying, we don't want them in this profession.
Right.
And so I had, out of 30 plus of these hearings that I have presided and conducted and presented, five of those were false statements. Each one of those had a false dishonesty statement, and they were found guilty. And in the penalty phase, they were terminated. And so that to me was super difficult, bro. Why? Because the emotions that comes with this job just totally fucking suck, dude.
Yeah.
I was not, I mean, I was just let's see, I made sergeant in '07. I got this job in 2011. I did it for almost 5 years. But bro, and then to top it all off, not only was I putting on these cases, I was in law school. I was in my first going into my second year of law school because I just loved this discipline stuff that I wanted to be a police attorney, when I retired. Obviously things have changed. I'm a big time podcaster now. And I teach this
Yeah.
stuff. But just for me, only because I got the riz, bro. I'm very witty, very energetic. I love to laugh. I can have a beer with anyone,
Hmm.
even my closest enemy, and and enjoy life. But let me tell you something. There was nothing joyful about prosecuting cops.
No,
Now,
I can't imagine.
with that being said, because I want to keep the record clean, I want to keep the record straight, is in LAPD, they have another unit section called Officer Representation Section, which is considered by many outside of LAPD in a lot of states your union reps. So we have a full-time unit where there's a majority of sergeants, and your sole job is to defend cops. And so I did two tours defending cops, and I've been IA. We talked about that earlier too. So I've shared, you
Yeah.
know,
You
I've
got the
shared
gamut.
pretty much. Yeah, I got the gamut, man, and I got to tell you, man, I truly enjoyed way more defending cops than I did prosecuting cops because there's
Yeah.
nothing funny, there's nothing joyful, there's no positive energy, if you will, about being in a trial setting, telling the board members that that accused employee, that officer right there, is a liar. And we're going to present all this evidence. We're going to bring in a whole bunch of witnesses so you can listen to all this testimony, right?
Hmm.
And you're going to make that decision whether or not they're going to be guilty or not guilty.
Yeah.
And there's nothing fun about that, bro. But you know what? I learned a lot, John. I learned so much that now it's my time to give back, to let you know what a really good, well pleaded internal affairs investigation should be. And guess what, man? A lot of people get into this job, dysfunction, and number one, they don't like it. And number two, maybe they're not that good at it.
Yeah. 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 I can imagine. And what was one of, I guess, do you even have a funny IA story at all? That's, I mean, because it's one of those things that I don't know. I mean, is the funny complaints come to you guys? You're like, what
Oh
the?
yeah.
You're sitting there like, what the fuck is this? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I could be spitballing here, but
We're gonna share a reel with you of
uh,
my boss, Scott Savage from Savage Training Group, that addressed our class the last time we just taught not too long ago here in Northern California. That shared a really funny one. Um, but the ultimate funny, and this is actually a true story. I just can't figure out which division and which officer. But yeah, someone came into station and pretty much told an officer that her ovaries were stolen.
did the officer get an IA complaint on
That's
her?
a true story. They actually cut.
Are
Yeah,
you
we call it cutting a face sheet. They cut the face sheet, bro. That to this very day, what I've been told, and I haven't done too
what the
much
fuck?
research, but I've been told that someone actually took an IA on those particular circumstances.
Wow, wow. Like, did they have evidence to support it? I mean,
Yeah. And sometimes you'll
obviously,
get people to
but
call you and says, I got aliens, they're coming in my room.
yeah.
I, there's one of my other guests told me he was a correctional lieutenant where one of the inmates said, you know what, there's aliens. They came into my cell and raped me.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, man.
yeah, yeah. I've been there on those
But
schizophrenic calls. Yeah,
as you and I continue this conversation, I'm gonna interject and come up with them because now you got my wheel spinning
yeah. The
to
ball's
figure
gonna.
out which was one of the funniest that I actually had to deal with. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it'll come up.
Yeah, I remember I think my first schizophrenic call was I think I had maybe a year on and the woman was complaining middle of the night that the animals and the people inside the pictures on of her walls were talking to her. And I'm like, what the fuck am I walking into right now? Just stuff like that. And then it just compounded over time with other calls. And yeah, they kind of all merged to one as with all that sort of stuff. But so your podcast has been around a year, a little over a year. How
Yes.
how was it getting into the social media realm with that?
Oh, dude, it's so challenging. I mean, look, man, I started off with I'm just going to call it exactly what it is. Let's not give it a cute name. You know what? Clarity will always win. That's what my boss tells me when I teach. Just be clear about your message. And so I called
Right.
it Internal Affairs, a police podcast. And my job was to, lucky me, that I come from a big organization. And a lot of my ex bosses and my FTOs came in and I say, hey, man, share a story with me tell me about an IA that you got or that you investigate or if you're a lieutenant or above, that you adjudicated.
Yeah.
What factors did you take in consideration when you were trying to come up with a decision? And so that kind of grew into uh, current events. I think we can all agree that as a podcaster, this is the way I see it: is that we have some responsibilities if you're going to be doing this type of this type of I wouldn't say work because it's a lot of fun, but when you're in this entity as a police podcaster, if something viral happens like tomorrow, you got to be on it.
You have
And
to. If you want
you
to be
have to
relevant,
be
you
on it.
have to be on it.
Exactly. So, what I started doing was I started going from these interviews like we're having and asking questions about, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is internal affairs in a police department? 10 being the highest. Ask you questions. Hey, John, if you're in a room full of sergeants right now today and they're beginning their internal affairs investigation assignment, what's the one thing you want them to know about that job? So we started having these conversations that are good. It's a good way of getting to see how people actually see the lens, right, of internal affairs. But next thing you know, after a year, and shout out to Scott Simpson, I actually hired what we call an FTO. I was part of a YouTube incubator coaching program, and he taught me a lot. He taught me from thumbnail to descriptions to analytics I mean, you name it, I had it done, and a lot of my success comes from his advice, from his guidance, and we started learning that okay, I kind of want to start another channel called Capers because no one really knows what the word caper means. So if I can have guests come on and say, hey bro, hey John, tell me about that crazy caper you got into, Bro, Marlon, dude, let me tell you about that fucking pursuit we got. Fucking balls to the wall. Suspect fucking flies. Next you know, we're on the run. We're jumping fences. You name it. Yeah, code 4 in custody. That's crazy. That's a great caper, right? And then what we realized is that as I started picking up momentum, a lot of people were watching. You know, shout out to my editor, Mohit. He's just a he's awesome. So a lot of my success comes from my editor and this incubator coaching program. And so we started realizing, okay, now I have to brand myself. There's got to be a brand. And one of my guests said that her sister said, "Hey, are you going to go on that show with that IA guy?" Uh, and I said, "You know what?" Light bulb hit. And I asked her, "Hey, if you don't mind if I use the IA guy?" She goes, "Absolutely not."
No,
And
it's a good. I
so
like it.
it graduated to the IA guy. And I have this responsibility to, more than anything, to just give you pointers or to let you know how I see things just from my experience. Like, for example, if there's a huge major viral incident and it's an OIS and we are presenting the case to the DA, the charges get rejected. Now you got to go through the IA. You know what? I'm going to kind of walk you through that process and paint that picture for you. There's some that we've done, and this is with the BWC library. You get exclusive content where I think one that we did was they show up to the gas pumps, to the liquor store gas pumps, and they tase a man in a wheelchair, right? So to make the long story short, they tased him.
Hmm.
Stop resisting, they tase him, they tase him, they tase them. They stun gun tase him, not the darts. And by the way, facts indicate that he was walking inside the gas station, right? Before he was at the pumps. And so they get him in the car, right? They arrest him. Oh, by the way, he has 5 warrants. So one of those warrants is battery on a police officer. So next thing you know, he gets fired. He gets terminated. And so what I did was, okay, I, let's okay, let's put that up on the chalkboard. Check.
Hmm.
Then I went to go see the press conference of the chief. And the chief, in his 12-minute press conference, has a taser in his hand going, "This is not the first option. This is horrible. The officer shouldn't have done that. And that's why I terminated him." Well, you know what? My thoughts are, okay, so he's a 4-year officer that's
40,
never had an IA. Four. He only
4.
had four
Okay.
years on.
Yeah.
Never had an IA. And last time that he actually had any type of training with the deployment of a taser was probably in the academy. Certainly, they didn't go through a scenario with a man in a wheelchair. That doesn't happen, right?
Right.
And now we're going to cut him off of the knees and fire him? I don't know. I don't know if that's what I would do. And so that's my lens, and that's what I try to do a lot with these critical incidents, just to give you a different perspective. Because, hey, man, what comes with this job, I guess you can call it a job, right? Being a, content creator, being a podcaster, is you definitely don't want to pass too much judgment and fill in the shoes of a fellow colleague, right? A fellow
Yeah.
officer.
Yep.
That's not what we should be doing. But us cops, I mean, forget about it. We're our worst enemies, bro. Did you see, for example, did you see the one where the police officer shows up to the assisting living, right, old age home, and he has a chainsaw that he's trying to rev up to start, and he
I
shows
didn't.
up and he deploys a taser.
I did not
You
see that
remember
one,
that?
but I did not
Okay,
see that one, but I've
you've
heard
heard
it.
about it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the first comments out of all of us coppers, right off the bat, quote unquote, don't bring a taser to a chainsaw fight.
Right.
So the first question I ask myself is like, okay, well, when was the last time that you actually had a scenario with a suspect with a chainsaw inside an assisting living home?
Yeah.
I mean, come
Yeah.
on, man.
Yeah.
Got caught. Oh, and then I hear people saying he should be fired. He should have never been a cop. He's not allowed to be a cop. Okay, wow. So look, it ends up in an OIS, and the suspect ends up, he ends up KMA. He's dead. Okay. Guess what? All the outcry is not coming from the community, right? The community is saying, dude, thank God you stopped this guy and you killed him, right? Because he could have been in there, I don't know, chainsawing and killing other, people in wheelchairs in an old age home, right?
Right.
All the outcry came from us. So when you ask yourself, are we our worst enemies? We eat our
Oh,
own?
100%.
Absolutely. So
100%.
what? So essentially, what you're saying is that you should just fire this cop. So being involved in a critical incident and he gets a critical incident review somewhere down the road, you're going to say, well, you know what? Dude, bro, you should have never brought a taser into a chainsaw fight. And therefore, you don't belong doing this job because you should have just broke leather and fucking shot him. Okay, guess what? Now you're fired. I mean, come on, let's keep it real, bro. At
When
least
people
that's the
start
way I see things.
Right. When people start breaking down videos and stuff like that, especially if you're talking about like, someone on social media breaking down that video and giving those opinions if they should be fired, it's man, there's a hundred different, variables that go into every
Yeah,
sort of situation that you don't know it. Was he working a 16-hour shift, or
yeah,
was he
yeah,
on his
yeah,
fourth 16-hour shift in a row? Like what kind of sleeps he been getting?
yeah.
What did he just leave? What was the call before
And
that? I mean, all that sort of
yeah,
stuff. It compounds into how you handle each
and
call.
when you watch it, the video depicts when he first uh, deploys a taser and points it at the suspect. He's sitting there going, "Drop the taser, drop the taser." You know what? Drop the chainsaw. The guy's a nervous fucking wreck. Guess what? I would have been too.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
but then who am I to pass judgment on you to say, "Hey, dude, break fucking leather and fail to drill, pop two, call it a day."
Well, we
Two to the
all
chest, one to the head. I don't know.
we've all done it where we're going over those sort of scenarios as I hit my mic. We're all going over those scenarios in our heads, right? So it's what am I going to do when I see a guy with a gun at the store? Like you're going over like passing the local gas station, the 7-Eleven, and there's an armed robbery. What am I going to do? We're always playing those scenarios in our or a good cop is always
Yes.
playing those scenarios in their head, right? How often do you change up the variable of the actual suspect and what they're doing? So,
Yeah, good point.
so it's always somebody of. For me, I got into that habit of thinking that the suspect is always going to present themselves in some sort of way. And what I mean by that is that they're 6 feet tall, they're 220 pounds, they're of above average like muscular size and all that sort of
Hmm.
stuff. And I just always replayed that suspect in my head. I never thought about the 65-year-old woman that's having a schizophrenic break coming after me with a knife, or the 70-year-old older guy that's holding a
Yeah,
knife down to his wife, but
yeah.
he's the schizophrenic thing that I actually experienced. But my point to that is I've read a lot of officer down sort of stats, and there was one in Manchester, New Hampshire from the 70s that the guy was killed on a noise complaint by a 15-year-old with a rifle.
Mhm.
And so we always think it's going to be that person that's of equal size, strength, stature, and age, somewhere thereabout.
Correct.
We don't always play the other variable when we're thinking
No.
of these things. So
Yep.
there's a lot of different things that go into a lot of different factors that go into all these situations. And like you said, that guy may have been, uh, thinking he was going to experience a person with a knife and never thought about the person with a chainsaw coming after him. I've
Right. And
never
then,
thought about it.
bro, when tell me an academy that's gone through something like that
Right,
scenario.
right.
I mean,
So
come on, let's keep it real.
yeah, I don't want to keep too much of your time. I do have,
No, no, no. Ask away, bro. You know what?
no,
I'm a true believer. Like, you were saying earlier, just the fact that we can meet people from all over the nation, it's been so good, bro. It
yeah.
really has.
And I didn't fuck up the
I
time this time. I fucked it up
no,
on Thursday, but not, that's and
the journey,
I
yeah.
it's
The
not the first
journey
time
has
that's
just
happened.
been great, bro.
That's good.
It's been satisfying, it's been purposeful. and I feel relevant, and I gained the respect, and I respect each and every one of you guys. Countercultures, you know what? Keep doing your thing. I love to help people out because I am the true believer, and I think you've already heard me say this. There will never be enough uh, platforms for us, especially us podcasters, to get our word out, to be heard, and to more than anything, just kind of inform. You know, have some informative, educational conversations. All that stuff is important. You can have them in the locker room. That's great. But you
Yeah.
know what? You know, not many people know what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. So where can people find you right now? On Instagram, on Facebook, social media? What's your websites? I know you have your
Yeah,
partnership
my
with the BWC library, right?
yes, yes. So www dot the bwclibrary.com. Two outstanding young, I'm an old school dude, I got to call everybody young now. Young kids who decided to uh, pretty much construct a website where you can avoid all ads, you can avoid commercials, you can avoid logging on to YouTube or whatever other outlet to educate your watch, right? If you're having roll call, or if you're sitting there working graves, pull out the phone and then you tell yourself, or maybe in roll call, the sergeant says, "Okay, you know what? Today we're going to watch an angry man with a knife, and do you want it to happen? You want an indoor? You want it outdoor? You want a taser? You want a beanbag, or you want the 40 mil? How much of a distance do you actually want it for? Do you want a pursuit, or do you want just a radio call?" So it's very, very comprehensive. And so we partnered up because the light bulb hit, and I thought to myself, well, it's one thing to watch it, which is great because you should be watching critical incidents to get that
Yeah.
knowledge, right?
Yep.
But we added also an expert uh, uh, link, right, in the website to get this conversation. So we'll break down certain incidents, and I can give you a perspective from my lens. And I invite experts to come in and say, "Hey, John, man, we just got done watching this OIS. So let's go back to start from the beginning. So what do you think, what's the thought process here? Or is there anything that we can learn that we could have done something different?" So it's kind of like we're passing judgment, but in a sense, at least as a host, I get to throw the softballs and say, "Hey man, let's learn something. We're not here to pass judgment on the officer. What he or she did, it's spot on. But there could be some other ways of handling this, and I hope that doesn't, you know, uh, get anybody, the person watching gets butthurt, like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this guy's saying." No, it's just a matter of being informative. So in the BWC library, we have that feature where you pay a little bit for a subscription, dude, and you know what? You can watch the IA guy, and I'll break all kinds of stuff down for you.
Awesome, awesome. I'd like to hear that. I've been on a few times onto the website to take a look at different videos that they have, and I like that. I kind of now I'm pissed at myself that I didn't fucking think of it, a couple of
Yeah,
years ago. You know
me
what
and
I
you
mean?
both. Me and you both were like, dude, that's genius.
Yeah,
That
yeah. I
really
mean,
is genius.
I also do struggle with going to YouTube and downloading videos off of YouTube. So I mean, that would have been
Yeah.
that's
Me and you both. I scrub. Yeah. I mean, part of the job, what I do is, and what I've done a lot and graduated, what I've been doing lately is a lot of breakdowns. I try
yeah.
to educate. I love, I'm going to have a section now I just came up with, caring in the wild. I love the Karens. Caring in the wild is just phenomenal. Uh, and then not only do I tell you, hey, not only did they just lose their shit in this traffic stop, but if they decide to call their local police department and filed an
Mhm.
IA on them, I'm here to tell you that this particular case will be exonerated. The officers did nothing wrong. And then I give shout outs for the way they handled.
Oh, that's
So
good to
caring
hear.
in the wilds, man, be on the lookout. I have all my content mainly on Instagram, IA Guy Podcast. I think it's IA Guy Podcast all together. And of
Okay.
course, man, you got to go to the YouTube channel. A lot of LAPD guests You get to learn a lot about the history about LAPD. There's a lot of, hopefully, a lot of your listeners and people who are watching don't really know much about what happened in the 1992 riots. I get to ask all my old school, captains and
I've heard the
officers.
documentaries and whatnot. I've never actually
Yeah,
spoken to anybody that was there, you
yeah,
know?
but I actually get to bring in a guest and I get to
Right.
ask him, hey man, come 5 p.m. when the verdict came out, where were you? And of course, they're going to tell you something on the lines that, shit, dude, I watched my city burn down for 3 days.
Yeah.
And then the Rampart scandal, not many people are really familiar with the Rampart scandal. It just shows you that, I'm just getting older, bro. But
Well, I am
there,
a little bit because he was stationed in New Hampshire when he was in the
there,
military.
there you go.
So I'm just a little bit, it's just one of those
Right,
Wikipedia like rabbit
right.
holes you go down.
Yeah, and what I've realized is that there's a lot of misinformation too
Yeah.
about it because
Okay.
it wasn't actually a scandal per se. What it was two officers, Nino Durden and Ray Perez, that were just fucking thugs, dude. They were
Yeah.
what I call Pablo Escobar in uniform. That's who they were. But we want to blame and let the media and the public know that it was the entire crash unit, which is like 25 plus officers, 4 or 5 sergeants with 2 lieutenants and a captain that they have to report to, which that's not the case. And there was a crash unit in every single division, which at the time was probably about 18 divisions in the Los Angeles Police Department. So yeah, we use YouTube, the that platform for come tell your story. You get to control your narrative, and again, like we talked earlier, if the department did you wrong, as long as we do it in a very respectful, professional way, then because hey man, how are we supposed to learn?
Yeah. You
If
know
if
what?
you if you got it wrong, it's okay. But how do we learn? Why do you always wonder that there's all these lawsuits, all
Mhm.
these civil suits for wrongful termination, discrimination, sexual harassment, workplace hostile working environment? A host of this. But the only way we're going to learn is if we have these conversations. Put your ego aside, command staff, and maybe just come in and let's have that conversation.
Yeah, I think that's half of how everybody learns. I think is through
Yeah.
fucking up. You know what I mean? It's admit it when you
Yeah.
when you fucked up and take what you can from it and put it keep moving forward and just put it behind you. Like
Well,
learn from it, but just put it behind you and move on. You know?
yeah, 100%. And the shitty and more, I should say, shittier. I know that's not a word, but to
Have
tack
you?
on more shit to it is if you are told after a year and a half, hey, you got to come back to work. Go ahead and suit up and log on and go respond to calls for service. We fucked
Well,
up, but you
yeah,
got to do your job. And so where does he or she get an opportunity to say, you know what, this is kind of what you put me through and you guys got it wrong. I'm not, listen, I understand we're kind of pointing fingers, but we have to be able to learn about the mishaps and the
right,
misunderstanding
right.
that you thought you were right about.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with you, man. I completely agree. You know what? I was thinking of this while, throughout a conversation.
Yeah.
It's good to see a retired guy keep his foot in the door somehow. And
Yeah.
whether it's I see a lot of guys, I obviously mean both men and women, who leave the job
Uh-huh.
and just get out of it and they just go completely like fucking haywire and they do something else. And you hear a lot of them that die within, 2 years,
Yeah.
and it's I don't know if it's have to do with it. They don't have anything to do with the job that actually like it asked a lot of you during that time period, and you always felt relevant in people who
Yes.
retire. Because I did 10 years full time. I stopped for a bunch of or not a bunch. I stopped for beginning of 21 until the end of 23. I was
Okay.
part time. Then I went back to full time work, and it was just a matter of where I was in the living at that point in time.
Yeah.
As I moved from New Hampshire down to Mass, and nonetheless, my own experience, it fucking sucked when I stopped doing it full time work. It was, I
Yeah.
mean, I was obviously a little younger, so
Yeah.
It was absolutely, it was awful, and I don't wish that feeling upon like anybody. As weird as that sounds, I mean, I still have my foot in the door doing the part time stuff and all of this, and with the new job I had at that point in time, it was side by side with law enforcement, but it was fucking awful not having that actual like just that need. They didn't need me there. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? And so
100%. Makes a lot of sense.
and so I like to see the fact that when guys, both men and women, retire, that they have something to do with law enforcement, still keeping their foot in the door and being relevant and passing on the knowledge that you've gained throughout the 20,
Yeah.
25, 26 years of doing the job.
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
when that leaves, and people sometimes they don't pass it on, and it's hard to gain it back.
To
And so
gain
I
it.
like,
Absolutely.
yeah, I like to see the platform. Now you're not just doing it in Southern California. You're doing it, especially with the podcast and YouTube. You're doing it essentially worldwide, and so
Yes.
and that's good to pass out that knowledge. And there's things that I've learned just from listening to you talk here today, and from your podcast, and I do truly appreciate it. So just wanted to let you know.
Yeah,
But
no, 100%, man. And you can always get a hold of me. Send me an email because I know we talked about it earlier. You know what? My Blue Consulting is my consulting uh, business where basically, if whoever is listening or watching, if you happen to have an internal affairs investigation completed, right? You've been served, and for whatever reason, you went to to your chief. Your chief told you, hey, you know what? We're going to fire you, or we're going to give you, this suspension. If you truly feel that that particular IA is not really well pleaded, well written, and it's got a lot of holes, I mean, you can tell yourself. Get a hold of me because that's the kind of service I provide. Now, with that being said, you and I can agree. Not every attorney is competent. Not every IO is smart. Some are dumb. You know, and 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 sometimes as it goes through the levels of review, the adjudicators, sometimes it's self-serving. And so though that's where I come into picture, where I can tell you, yeah, you know what, this has a lot of holes, and we're able to, through my expert opinion, to say that this is a bad practice, this is best practice, or they violated this, it should have been written that, framing of allegations, what's the factual basis of this dishonesty, this misleading statement, so on and so forth. So I provide that service, and I'm all in, man. I love helping out. Unfortunately, it's a much needed service. Why? Because not everybody is cut out to be an IA investigator, and you and I can agree that who the hell wants to do an IA tour anyways? Some people are voluntold, and some people just will go through the whole career just saying, you know what, fuck IA, I don't want to be part of that.
yeah, yeah, I get it. Well, Marlon, I don't want to keep you too long, and I do have to get ready for work myself, man. I
Yeah.
do truly appreciate you rescheduling for me because my fuck up earlier
Yes.
a couple days ago, and like I said, that wasn't the first time, unfortunately, and yeah, it's not it's not good. But I truly do appreciate it, man. And just one more time, just lay out your websites and where people can get a hold of you.
Yeah. So definitely a YouTube channel, the IA guy, and on Instagram for sure. IA Guy Podcast. John,
Awesome.
thank you so much. You got a friend now forever. You ever come to LA, you got to come to the studio. And if I ever make it out there, you owe me an old fashioned. That's all I
Yeah.
ask.
All right. Sounds good. Take care, Marlon.
Take care, bro.